Okay, so Tuesday's reading only covered a couple pages. I think it was like 5 pages, so it wasn't too long. But it all talked about national and regional programming for radio, and how, or the beginning talked about how national and regional programming is available both through radio networks and radio syndicators. The difference is that networks provide a full service product like music, news, air talent, or national sports. Not sports, national spots, commercials, and stuff like that. And they're going to air at the same time on all the affiliated stations, while syndicators provide usually only one element of programming, like just music service, to individual stations, and they can air that material at different times whenever they want. National and regional syndication can also be divided into 3 different categories: short form, long form, and continuous music formats. And a side note is that some syndicators also provide content for online platforms as well as the broadcast. Short form are your individual network newscasts and your syndicated programs and series. And long form programming are the shows that run for several hours on a daily or weekly basis. Continuous music formats are exactly what they sound like. It's just 24/7 music selections. When the 80s came around, there was a new type of national music programming that came about. It was the full-time live network radio format. But now the modern satellite-delivered networks supply the combined services of a traditional network, like your news and your advertising, with a formatted program service, like music and entertainment programs. One reason stations decide to go with a service instead of locally producing their programming is that it can reduce the operating costs by half, which is kind of a big deal. So while local programming is nice, another pro, I guess, to national programming is that national programming is based on research that the smaller stations can't really afford to perform. Another important thing mentioned is that unlike networks, syndicators traditionally don't sell commercial time, and they don't produce newscasts. Another fact is that just like the local formats, the network and syndicated services operate based on clocks. Then it went into detail about scheduling the content as far as network affiliate stations go, that is, and how during each mandatory break, the station has to fill that time with, the local station has to fill that time with the local content, like your commercials and your weather and your traffic and stuff like that. And then the networks will use that time to send important information to all the affiliated stations. A tip that it gave that I thought was kind of important to write down was that the key to operating a satellite-delivered format is localization. So making a station sound like it's part of the community, even though the content is not produced locally. It really emphasized the importance of giving local information. And it said basically, because all listeners are always going to want to hear your traffic reports and your weather reports and your local information like that. One downside to running the full-service satellite-delivered music programming is that the local station has very little control. And by choosing to use a format syndicator, the station has more control because the music and all the other elements can be located at the station. Special music programs and concerts, we talked about that a little bit, and how special music programs have always been kind of popular with both the stations and advertisers, and that concerts are popular because they pull in premium prices. But most local stations don't really have the financial means to afford these kind of concerts or major performers. While syndicators can offer these kinds of specials or these kinds of shows to stations on a barter or cash plus barter basis, networks can possibly offer these kinds of specials as part of the full service network programming. But what it all comes down to is how big of an audience can the special or concert series pull in. Usually it's hard to target the right audience for these specials for that station's demo, but they usually try to target either the 18 to 34-year-olds or the adult demo of 25 to 54-year-olds. For a network that's looking for musical concerts or specials, there are 3 different alternatives. One, they could produce a lot of shows of varied appeal to capture fragments of the youth or adult audience. Or they could concentrate on the stars that appeal across the broadest format spectrum, or they could buy or produce programs that have unique or broad appeal. And this last strategy is the most cost efficient. A good tactic for that first strategy is a countdown show, because it appeals to an audience who is going to listen to a wide variety of music, and they clear the broadest range of affiliates. The shows do. Then it has a section about features and how broadcasters can use features to attract a specific audience during different day parts. So stations will use short features to add variety to their programming, and then use the longer programming to fill the unsold or the low audience time periods. I also made a note that it said that one of the most important types of features today was the syndicated morning show. And an example of that would be like the Kid Craddock show in the morning and other programs like that. It talked about how a feature can be format exclusive, meaning the feature can be sold to other stations in the market as long as their formats differ, meaning only one country, one rock, or one talk show can actually license the program. And this is done to ensure non-duplicated listeners. Then it talks about the future of radio and how it's no longer going to be delivered only via broadcast transmission, but in the future also by wireless services. But it said that the terrestrial broadcasters still have a competitive advantage because they're free, and it has the ability to make use of those same next generation platforms and deliver them to listeners who prefer them. And the other advantage they have is that they can use on-air talent and their local commitment, which a lot of listeners like. And then the section also emphasized the importance of stations having a presence in the mobile space in order to compete, and how the 1996 Telecommunications Act completely changed the strategies and economics of radio programming, and how programmers are now trying to counter that these technological pressures that are fragmenting their audience, which is requiring them to use their best talent across multiple stations and across multiple platforms. That's the main thing, is across these multiple platforms. And what it all comes down to, moral of the story, is that they basically have to keep the audience engaged. And that's the best way. And that pretty much covers the Tuesday reading.